Welcome to the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wall. I'm an RDH and founder of Inspired Hygiene. For over 20 years, we've had the unique opportunity to see what really happens inside thousands of dental hygiene ops and what it takes to create transformational change that impacts the lives of patients, practice owners, and teams. Each season, we'll focus on one powerful topic, breaking it down with practical strategies, real stories, and tools you can use right away. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to a new season of the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. This season, we are going to talk all about innovation and why innovation is critical for dental teams to thrive going into 2026 and beyond. And for this first episode of the season, I invited our Director of Operations and my friend Jennifer Steadman. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hey, Rachel.
Thank you so much for being here. And so I want to just, those of you that haven't had an opportunity to meet Jennifer yet, at this point, you have been with Inspired Hygiene for about 2.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you bring with you, oh my gosh. You've had every role in the dental practice except for dentist.
Correct.
And yes. And you have had an enormous amount of experience leading teams through innovation with your role at Inspired Hygiene. Like you do some work with clients from time to time, and you have encountered thousands of dental office team members, dental office managers through your work with ADOM and your speaking, and also your experience being the director of operations for a 17 location DSO. So, talk about innovation and managing change. That's a lot. So you're really good at this, which is why I wanted you to be on episode 1. And so you and I, as we were prepping for this, it really all came down to that innovation is critical to stay relevant and for dental teams to thrive in 2026 and beyond. And as we were prepping for this, I realized, hey, 2026 is not that far from 2030, which is a little crazy. But here we are. Yeah. And so this is going to be the season that's going to wrap us up for 2025, just helping everybody move into next year. So I'm looking forward to it.
Same.
So yeah, thanks for being here. So let's take a look at this slide that I have used for the last several years. This need to evolve, the changes that we've seen in dentistry over the last 5 to 10 years are no secret. And it really is necessary to innovate in all areas of your practice. And you might not do it all at one time, but to really look at so many different areas in the practice. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed that without innovation, Jennifer, we risk becoming less and less relevant, right? We recognize that at Inspired Hygiene, and it's true with dental practices and individual team members and leaders. So before we kind of dive into this, what are your thoughts on that as far as the need to innovate in order to stay relevant and thrive going forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you see as examples?
I think a big one, even for practices, it's being able to schedule appointments online. That's been a huge one over the last years, right? Where if, 2:00 in the morning and, a parent is, laying in bed and they can't sleep and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to schedule that dentist visit for, Susie or for myself, even, that they have that ability to jump on and find the next available appointment that works for them and their schedule at 2:00 in the morning, right? Okay. That's been a huge one over the last few years, and is still evolving. Some practices don't have that ability right now too, but I think that's been a huge game changer, that they don't physically have to call your office and talk to you, that they can schedule that and have their calendar up and just take advantage of that at all hours of the day.
That is a really good example. And I would say another one is, we're going to talk about in this season, we're going to have some experts join us and talk about business processes,
Mhm.
outsourcing, insurance, documentation, um, embracing and integrating AI and technology into the practice, utilizing social media to help grow your team and grow your practice. And a lot of practices dabble in these things, right? You hear it all the time. I hear it all the time.
Mhm.
You know, yeah, we purchased this new piece of equipment, but we're really not using it that much.
Mhm.
Or we have the capability for online scheduling, but we tried it and we didn't get the right appointments in the right time, and so we're not using it anymore. So really, this season is not only about innovation, but like really deeply integrating these things into your practice or picking one to work on first, right? Rather than just dabbling, really, really going deep in it and really getting it to work to your advantage.
Yeah,
Thoughts
making it
on that?
stick.
Yes.
Yeah. Making it stick, that's the biggest thing, right? So I know we're going to chat about some of that stuff today too, just to help to make innovation stick,
Mhm.
and make your team understand why you're doing it is so important too, to kind of
Yes.
get involved in that process.
Yes, yes. And on the topic of relevance, for dental practices, it's important. You've got to innovate how you're marketing for team, what the benefits that you're offering, the flexibility that you're offering in order to stay relevant, to retain your current team members and to recruit others. That's another good example. And
Yeah.
I would say for dental hygienists, right, since that's our primary, focus at Inspired Hygiene is helping really develop, grow, empower, motivate the hygienists is if we're not evolving our communication, our clinical skills, our philosophies, then we risk being irrelevant to our patients. We risk being irrelevant, um, and not having the maximum opportunities in our career development, right, as we progress in our career. And that's really true for any clinician, is being willing to embrace new things is really, really important and critical as we move forward. And there's so many new things that sometimes it's just a little overwhelming. So again, you don't have to do all these at one time, but we're going to give you a little insight into, like you said, what it takes to really help make this innovation stick. Um, and so, as I mentioned before, we talked about some of those planned topics to really get from AI and technology, get an industry view of what's coming, what is really taken hold in the industry, and what are maybe some things that haven't been adopted as quickly as we had hoped. Same thing with AI. And how do we get our team to feel confident and comfortable embracing these different things? Looking at how social media can help us build deeper relationships with our community and help market not only for patients, but for team members. You and I are going to talk again during this season about staffing and compensation and how to really be relevant and have a modern, innovative approach to that. So, really, though, what it takes is developing what we call that culture, the culture that supports innovation. So, based on your experience, Jen, with running that large organization and dealing with, so many team members, um, what were the biggest points of innovation that you and your team experienced during your time there?
Yeah. So quite a few, I'll say. And some went very well and others
Right.
failed miserably. And it was all the approach that was taken. So a few of them. First one was implementing a whole new practice management software for all
Mm,
locations, cloud-based. We'll talk about that a little bit and why that didn't work. Intraoral scanners in each practice, which is huge. That was an amazing initiative that we had to have scanners in every office. A custom supply formulary. So that's another huge one to help savings for the practice, but to also help not just financially, but time for the practices, for ordering and everything like that. project management tool. So implementing Monday.com was a huge one. And I know, Rachel, we use Monday.com at Inspired Hygiene. So we talk about, having that culture of innovation. We have that at Inspired Hygiene too. Like, we look at our systems and what we need to do and pain points and making sure that when we have everything that we need. But, the biggest thing that I found was making sure that your entire team was on board and understanding like what their pain points are and what you can do to help it be better, and just make their days a little bit easier. So when I said like the practice management system failed, I'll say that was not the best experience. And the reason for that was it didn't create what we call the triple win. It didn't work for the patients, the providers, and the team. It worked for a portion of the team, but not everyone. So it worked better for the administrative side, but not the clinical side.
Yeah.
And because the due diligence wasn't inclusive of other members of the team, we found that it added, I know people listening, if you're a clinician, think about adding 20 to 25 minutes to an appointment just because an x-ray doesn't populate on your screen.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So little things that I guess we take for granted, which shouldn't be, because it shouldn't take that long. But it's because they didn't have the team involved in that. The decision was made by other people, and then it was just here, this is what we're doing. So really making sure that the team is involved. And that's why the other initiatives did stick, is because the team was involved. And that's when I kind of jumped into the role that I was in before I came to Inspired Hygiene, as director of operations, and VP of ops after that was just to help make sure that everything stuck, and really getting the team involved in that at its infancy. We're just right when you start thinking about it is when you should have your team involved in it.
Yeah. So that speaks to, for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you can see this little graphic we have here, this culture piece, right? Nurturing an atmosphere of collaboration and teamwork that's such a great point, Jen. As soon as you start thinking about adding something, bringing in an innovation, whether it's a software, whether it's a new clinical service or new marketing, have those collaborative conversations with the team as well, because they can really give you insight that are going to help you make a decision on maybe the product that's going to be the best fit, or the rollout, or whatever it might be. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the culture of innovation and why that is so important, right? Nurturing that collaborative atmosphere and teamwork. So what did you see as indicators of success? What did you see were indicators that the team would be able to successfully integrate this new process, service, technology?
So I think the first thing is just listening and understanding like what the team's pain points are. If you are able to solve a challenge in their day-to-day and they understand the why behind it and it affects them, they're going to be more involved in it. At the beginning, right? If you wait until the end and say, we're going to implement this new system and this is how it can help you, they're not going to be as likely to be supportive of it. So that was a huge point, is to really understand what their challenges are. And that's when communicating with your team on a regular basis is really important. So communicating through the entire process really helps to make sure that it's successful. So we said at its infancy, right? Before things happen, like talk to them about what's going on, what the status of things are. Once you have implemented it, the training process, what that looks like, if there is any migration of data or anything like that, that you have someone that's involved with that too. But having like a super user or super users on your team that understand the initiative, the technology, what have you, whatever the innovative tool is, that can help to support the team too. So they don't always have to go to tech support or make a phone call to an outside company. If you can, yes, you still have that capability, but having a super user on your team that can help to support the team on a more frequent basis can not only be a time saver, but also fiscally responsible for you as well. Just take that time to do that. And I think like having a clear process, a clear plan, this is what the rollout looks like, check on your team to see how they're doing, and really having one person or a team of people that are responsible from the implementation of this initiative, of this innovative tool, that is not the same group of people or the same person every time, because there can be a lot of weight with that too. But have a group of people or have someone that's going to be responsible, that's the go-to. And they can, help deploy the troops or do whatever that they need to do to make sure that it is successful. But having a go-to team or a go-to person definitely make sure that process is going to be successful.
Okay, so what I'm seeing this kind of fall into these buckets are leadership. And we'll go back and kind of circle back on these. Leadership, team collaboration, and communication. So what I've noticed with leadership is, having a positive and present clinical leader is critical for implementing just about anything, right? Now, maybe if the admin team is installing a new printer, maybe that doesn't require the clinical leader, right? But if it's anything that is remotely involving the clinical processes and delivery of care, that clinical leader kind of holding that vision is really, really important, because they can, and for a couple reasons. One is, a lot of times business owners, if they happen to be the clinical leader, a lot of times they're high what we call quick start, which is they have a lot of ideas. And some of you might be working with, I know I have, dentists that have a lot of ideas. They want to try all kinds of new things, and they bring in all this technology, honestly, faster than the team can embrace it, faster than the team can integrate it, because integration really means it's being used on a day-to-day basis. It's like, let's use digital scanners, for example, right? It is for the most part replacing alginate impressions or polyvinyl impressions, and you're using that on a day-to-day basis. Now, some technology isn't as integrated as others, but imagine if the clinical leader just brings that in, and then before the team can even really get comfortable and confident with scanning, they bring in something else. Maybe it's another scanner, and the team is just like treading water to kind of keep up. And a lot of times what happens is things don't get integrated, and they're not used. So the leaders are often like on board with bringing in the innovation, but they've got to be equally on board with training and supporting the team. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, you were talking about that a little bit there. I think one time that I saw it work really well was when we had a custom supply formulary. So for those that don't know what that is, we had a relationship with a supplier, and we said, okay, we can get better pricing as a DSO, but we can get even better pricing if we narrow it down to a few select distributors or different companies and vendors within that catalog. So what we did was we chose a handful of dentists from our team, clinical leaders that are in their individual practices. But we chose certain people specifically. One that was a very scientifically focused dentist, right? He got down to the white pages of everything. So he could help some of those dentists that needed to understand the why behind the products and what it could do, and compare and contrast the different materials down to like the viscosity and all of these crazy. Then we had another that had been in the team for a very long time, was a mentor to a lot of the dentists. Everyone held him to a very high regard. And then we had another one that might have been a little bit more challenging to have him try things or change different things. So we created a team or a group that could look at these different things and say, okay, what do we think is better? Try different things out and really hone in on what makes these materials the best from our opinion, and give some option, because for this example, we needed all of the providers to still have their own clinical autonomy, but also understand because sometimes we get stuck on things. But having that team put together that can go through these things and say, okay, this is what works. This is what doesn't work. Let's try some of these other things, and then support everyone in that process to make sure that it sticks is so important, because you start one thing and it's like, you don't give it enough time for it to sink it, let everyone sink their teeth to it,
Right.
no pun intended, to then bring something else in, and then it just turns into another thing or another dust
Yeah.
collector in this that's
Yeah.
not being utilized. And it's usually not the tool that's the problem. It's usually the process.
System. That's exactly right.
So
That's exactly.
making sure that you have that down is so important to make sure that you're successful.
Mm-hmm. And what you did in that example too is you also created super users, right? Because those dentists had tested these products and were very familiar with them, and they could be a reference point that with
Yeah.
much easier access than like a tech support or a rep who's in 15 offices a day, that kind of thing.
And
Yeah.
even brought in hygienists in there too that were testing, different things, even prophy paste, fluoride varnish, masks, gloves, because that is such a particular thing that they were testing. Everyone had different things that they were testing, and then you come together and you talk about it. So it's really important to have your team involved. And if you have a larger team, have a subset of it that can help to support you with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then that's a perfect lead into, that team collaboration. And I would say, find out from your team. So, for example, one of the episodes we're going to do in this season is going to be about insurance, billing, outsourcing some of that work. And so let's say you're a practice owner and you're seeing that your team member is getting really bogged down with insurance verification phone calls and insurance follow-up phone calls, and you really believe that their best position is to be treatment coordinator, right? Presenting treatment, getting it scheduled, patients feeling confident, but yet they have this other role that's taking up a lot of their time. Instead of just, coming in one day and saying, hey, we're going to outsource all of that, have a conversation with that team member first, and I think a lot of times leaders or business owners are afraid that the team member is going to feel threatened, but they're going to feel way more threatened if you just hire someone without talking to them first. So yes, they might feel that way. They might feel a little bit nervous, but if you give them an opportunity to be involved and you share your vision and say, what I really want is for you to get freed up so you can do more of what you love, which is the treatment coordinator role. And, somebody else can be on hold and call these, we can give them a template of what we need, or they already have a template because you're going to want to use a professional, company to do this. But start that conversation with the individual instead of kind of jumping ahead 3 steps and then expecting them to embrace it. So I think that's where that team collaboration really comes in. And we see this so often with Inspired Hygiene, is that it's so important to communicate to the hygienist in particular, obviously to the whole team, but like, hey, here's what I'm considering. And the reason is I really feel like we would benefit from having an outside source to help us streamline XYZ and help us all get on the same page with this and that. And, sometimes team members will respond by saying, oh, we can do that ourselves. But here's what I would say is look back, like, but have you tried to do it on your own and you just haven't been able to get there because you're either too busy, because it would be helpful to have a neutral party, right? Be kind of a facilitator of this, or maybe we've tried to implement something and we keep bumping into obstacles and we really could use an outside voice to help us figure out how to overcome those. But just starting that conversation early when you're thinking about it is really helpful and part of that collaboration. The team buys in so much better.
Yeah. And have your team research different, tools and stuff too for different companies, because then they're involved in the process. And I think one thing that I would highly encourage everyone to do, whatever the innovative tool is, whether it's, a new technology, a new practice management software, a new scanners, new anything, inspired hygiene coaching, like have your team look into it, but then also ask if you can speak to some of their customers, right? So I know like when we were looking to switch to different, practice management tools and things like that, I'm like, I want to physically go to one of their offices and see how it works throughout a day and see what it looks like on the admin and the clinical side. If you're looking to bring into a consultant, ask them, can I please speak to some of your past clients? They will have that information, and ask any questions that you want. It's so important to get other people's information and their feedback too, if they've been through it before. And they'll be honest. They'll tell you if it worked and if it didn't, right? And then you can also learn from that too. So every office is different, every practice is different, but just do your homework and ask those questions, because those resources are out there for you and for your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now communication is so important in everything, but you touched on that when you talked about having frequent check-ins. So it's so important to communicate when things are going well and when they aren't going so well. So what are your recommendations for, like, as they're like, let's say they're working on a new marketing campaign to attract more referrals, for example, and they're using social media and they're asking patients, and they've got a drawing in the office and they're doing all these different things. Like, what would be a good example of, like, how frequently should they check in? How should they report back success or problems? Like, what kind of communication should go on to get that to stick?
I think everyone that's involved should have a piece of it, right? So if you're saying, okay, there's an in-office marketing, there was a lot to unload there. So correct me here, but if I miss something. So there's in-office marketing, there's social media marketing, you say web marketing and stuff like that too. So you need a place that everyone has access to, that they can report how things are going. This is off the top of my head here. And maybe it's a spreadsheet or a tracker, project management tool, something like that, because you want to know when a patient comes in the office, which part of that marketing, where they came from. Yep. So you can't just say, oh, it came from our marketing initiative, but what part of the marketing initiative? Where did they come from specifically? But I would say, look, you need to obviously have pre-meetings before this gets rolled out, so everyone knows what's involved. I think one of the big things with marketing is sometimes practices forget to communicate that with their team. So their phone will ring and they'll say, oh, I just saw your ad. And the admin team member's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So really making sure that your team knows about what's coming up before it happens. So it might be a calendar showing, like, here's the ad that's out on Instagram on these specific days, or anything like that. But just communicating that before. Communicating it at the start, right? The day that it starts. And then depending on how robust your plan is, you might meet, that first week, you might have a quick touch point every week. If it's a huge, it's a big special event that you're doing, right? It really depends on the initiative, the marketing initiative that you're doing, but minimally weekly. To kind of talk and see what everything's going over. If it's a 6-month plan, then I can understand it being weekly. But if it's a big initiative that it's like, oh, we have 2 weeks, you're probably having a touch point once a week to check in, just to see how everything's going.
Yeah. And examples might be, let's say it is and we'll get more detail when we talk about the social media, and we're in the social media episode rather. But let's say it is a social media effort, and you're asking folks to take pictures or do like a video, right? Somebody on the team. So making sure everybody understands and is willing, right, to participate in that, and then having those deadlines, and then checking in, like, how's this going, and giving them some guidelines. Do you want this to be done in the practice? Do you want it to feature a certain part of the practice? Do you want it to be outside? Like, being really specific. I think that's just an example of that communication, and then really having somebody that is the point person for, hey, now that we have started doing these videos instead of just all stock photos, we're noticing that we're getting more followers, so giving some positive feedback to the team, that makes it worth their while. Because sometimes team members just feel like, oh, we're just doing this one more thing on our list. But if they can really see that this is making a difference, then it's going to help that become more of a, part of your practice long term.
Yeah. And I'll say, one of the marketing initiatives that I had in the past was for the practices to get more involved in their community. So it was a marketing initiative specifically regarding their community and where they were. So they would take pictures at a local coffee shop and all these different places. And so we could post those out on social media. And then we had an amazing platform, which I know will be discussed in future episodes, that the entire team could see what was coming up, when it was coming, to make sure that we were tagging that specific location, the event in the community. If one of the practices, there was a ballet that was coming, and it was like a community ballet, and they were advertising it and saying like, oh my gosh, you should go and see this. And the entire team went to it. So just different and taking pictures there and at the different events, and just to support others around us too. It comes back tenfold. It really does. So that's a great thing to do, just to kind of get your community and your team involved in the community in 2026 and beyond there too.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to wrap, Jennifer, because what you said was going and supporting others comes back. And when you develop and you nurture that culture of innovation, and your team expects there to be innovation, they expect there to be learning, they expect there to be a continual up-leveling of skills, then it's going to be easier to introduce innovation. It's going to be easier for your team to adopt new things because they're accustomed to it. They know they're expecting that. And so when you put in the effort to develop that leadership, to develop the collaboration and that communication, giving good positive feedback, giving feedback when things aren't working so great too, is, instead of it being like an attack, it is like, hey, I'm really having a hard time with this. Can you help me? But when you're really developing that culture, it's going to come back tenfold as well. So, super excited about this season and all of our special guests that we're going to have joining us. And we're really going to talk about these different areas of business processes and social media, AI, technology, staffing, and retention, and where it's really time going into 2026 to dig deeper on that innovation and integrate some of these things in your practice. So thanks, Jennifer, so much for being with me today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you all for listening to the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. Would love for you to go to your podcast platform, your favorite platform, and leave us a rating, leave us a review. Please share this with somebody else. We really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. We hope you got a ton of value and some things that you can really take away and implement now. So as always, we invite you, if we can help you in any way to optimize your hygiene department, head on over to inspiredhygiene.com. And as always, stay inspired.